of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, Mr. Lee Junhua, to make some closing remarks. You have the floor, sir.
Well, Your Excellency, the Ambassador, Mr. Chair of the Second Committee, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to congratulate you, Madam Chair, as well as the Vice Chairs and the Rapporteur and all Member States on concluding the session. The COVID-19 pandemic disrupted the Second Committee's work over the past 2 years. But this year's session saw a return of the past ambition and the breadth of the committee's work. You have enthusiastically resumed the full responsibilities of the Second Committee, and your work has yielded excellent results. Conflict and economic uncertainties continue to cast a long shadow. The impacts of climate change are being felt in every continent across the globe. Against this background, we must regain the lost ground. We must get on track to achieve the SDGs. A great finance divide curtails the ability of the many developing countries to invest in a sustainable and transformative recovery. This concern has been echoed in some of resolutions you adopted here today. This includes those dealing with financing for development, debt, and countries in special situation. You recognize the actions taken in responding to the pandemic by suspending debt service payments and helping to attend the long-term debt sustainability. You'd also encourage the use of the digital financial technologies, which have gained importance during the pandemic. You agreed on a date for a possible fourth UN conference on financing for development. You paved the ground for advances on tax cooperation. Madam Chair, I'm heartened by the commitment from all delegations to work closely to address our current global situation. There has been much progress on issues before the committee. Allow me to highlight a few of those. On eradicating poverty and addressing hunger, the committee reiterated its call for the integrated and coherent poverty eradication policies. The number of the nourished people worldwide has increased. Thus, the consensus on scaling up the anticipatory approaches to respond to the ongoing food security crisis is encouraging. You also recognize the efforts by multilateral organizations to respond to the current crisis, including through the Global Crisis Response Group on Food, Energy, and Finance created by the Secretary General. You welcome the efforts in coordinating a comprehensive global response to mitigate global food insecurity and its humanitarian impact through the implementation of the both Trade Facilitation Initiative and the Black Seed Grain Initiative. On the macroeconomic issues, you provided detailed guidance on policy interventions that will help the world to rebuild in a more inclusive and prosperous manner. On trade, you underlined the importance of enhancing the capacity of the multilateral trading system in the context of the multiple challenges posed by the pandemic. I'm pleased to know that the committee has continued to provide policy guidance on the challenges faced by the group of countries in special situations. On small island developing states, you welcome the offer by the government of the Antigua and Barbuda to host the fourth International Conference on Small Island Developing States in 2024. You provided the directions to organize this critical event. On landlocked developing countries, you also agreed on the modalities for the convening the third conference on the LLDCs in Kigali in the first half of 2024. And of course, you called for the various steps to strengthen the support to the least developed countries, pushing ahead with the Doha Program of Action. Your work paved the way for the second part of the LDC 5 conference in early 2023 in Doha. We look forward to the results of the mapping exercise mandated last year to provide a detailed overview of the current support available to middle-income countries. Excellencies, on sustainable development, you again did much work on important topics such as biological diversity, desertification, coastal zone management, as well as sustainable consumption and production, to name just a few areas. You adopted 3 new consensus resolutions on glaciers, zero waste, and on the role of the parliamentarians in sustainable development. Madam Chair, one lesson learned from the session of the committee is that key areas of its work are convergent. Lest you recognize the increasingly close interlinkages between the items under the sustainable development and those under macroeconomic policy and development finance. For example, the committee expressed its appreciation of the advanced work of a multidimensional vulnerability index. The committee also looked forward to the proposals on measures for progress that complement or go beyond the GDP for consideration of member states. For development finance to be truly transformational, special vulnerabilities must be considered. Excellencies, I would like to thank all the member states for their commitment and efficient work during this session of the committee. As we move ahead into the next year, we will be preparing for the high-level events on LDCs on water, on disaster risk reduction, and later in the year, the HLPF. In September, the SDG Summit will seek to reinvigorate the transformative vision of the 2030 Agenda. Together with our colleagues in the UN system, the department will give its full support to these key events. I wish you and your families safe and healthy holidays. Thank you so much.
I thank Undersecretary General Lee for his statement, and now I will deliver my closing remarks. Undersecretary General, Excellencies, colleagues, we have arrived at the conclusion of the work of the second committee. For the last 2 months, you have worked hard to make sure that the committee returns to speed after 2 years of limitations due to the COVID-19 pandemic. You have managed to renegotiate in full most of the resolutions. The texts we adopted in the past few days reflect the current state of play on the complex issues on our agenda, most of which have been impacted by the pandemic, geopolitical tensions, the current status of the global economy, and the multiple ongoing crises. The committee's resolutions will make a difference and will contribute to accelerating the implementation of the 2030 agenda. The resolution on FFD follow-up, for example, includes references to the ongoing work on a multidimensional vulnerability index, to the General Assembly high-level dialogue on FFD in 2023, to the operationalization of a resilience and sustainable trust, to a new SDG indicator under Target 17.3, as well as to the consultations on measures of progress in sustainable development beyond GDP. On the small island developing states, there is a reference to the new instrument on plastics whose negotiations are ongoing. The text also refers to the session on SIDS in the 2022 HLPF and to the 2024 fourth SIDS conference in Antigua and Barbuda. On landlocked developing countries, the committee agreed on the modalities for the third LLDC conference to be held in 2024 in Kigali. We also have new resolutions on zero waste, the role of parliamentarians for sustainable development, and the International Year of Glaciers Protection. Dear delegates, the last 2 months have been intense. Negotiations have not been easy, but you managed to preserve an atmosphere of collegiality, constructiveness, and compromise. My colleagues in the Bureau and I are grateful for that. We did our best to give every negotiating group the space it needed to come to conclusions that were acceptable to all. Of course, we could not settle all our differences, but the results we achieved are the best possible ones given the circumstances, and we managed to finish our work on time. And now it is thank you time. First and foremost, I would like to thank my fellow Bureau members, Abdulrahman, Ahmed, Vladimir, and Francesca. Thank you so much for your hard work, dedication, professionalism, and advice. I could not have asked for a better team. We did really work as one. The only differences we have so far are on who will win the World Cup. Special thanks to the co-facilitators of the resolutions. And you have been amazing in bringing together the views of all delegations, although often at the cost of sleep deprivation and emotional bruises. Your passion and determination can only be admired. I would also like to thank all of you, dear delegates. You engaged in this year's second committee with focus, constructive spirit, expertise, much creativity, and in many cases, willingness to compromise. Not always. Our work would not have been possible without the support of the 2 teams of the Secretariat, from the Department of General Assembly Affairs and Conference Management and from the Department of Economic and Social Affairs. I would like to thank Ms. Emer Harity, Secretary of the Second Committee, and the members members of her dedicated team, Leslie Bro, Rachel Stein-Holmes, Chihiro Mitsuda, Paolo Dua, Mary Constable, Josetta Noy, and Loreto Azopardi, as well as the DESA colleagues, Ms. Marion Bartolome, Fred Soltau, and Yup Teonisun, for their valuable support throughout those 2 months. Special thanks as well to all UN offices and entities that supported the work of the committee, especially in the negotiations on draft resolutions. Those conference officers led by Saba, interpreters, translators, editors, press writers, press officers, colleagues in the broadcast and conference support section, and the budget division. It does take that many people to ensure that the work of the second committee runs smoothly. And last but not least, I would like to thank Ivailo from my own team. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve as chair of the second committee. I wish you and your families a wonderful Thanksgiving and a joyous holiday season. And the meeting is adjourned. Following conclusion of the committee's work, the reports of the rapporteur will be prepared under each item. The date of consideration of the reports by the General Assembly plenary in December will be announced through e-delegate. I hereby declare the committee of the work of the second committee for the main part of the 77th session completed, and I ask you to stay behind for 5 minutes so we can take a group photo. We kind of need to go towards the back where the stairs are and organize ourselves. I hope it won't take too long.